I'm not really sure where it completely shifted, but I swear there was a time when go to college felt like the safest answer to everything. Like, that was the plan. That was the right away thing to do after high school. You go to school, you do what you're supposed to do, you get your degree, and life is supposed to somehow, voila, open up for you. And now it's like people did all that. And we're still trying to figure out why nothing happened after we got our degrees. And I've been sitting with that heavy feeling lately because it don't even feel like a rare situation anymore. It feels like we're at a point where some college grads are making less than people who never even went to college, or struggling harder to even find something that's stable. And that's not even me throwing shade. It's just what's actually happening right now in our reality. And it's weird to process when you grew up being told that that was the way out. I remember being a sophomore in college and starting to really look around like, wait, because there were so many people there who didn't grind to get there. They didn't study like that. They didn't stress like that. They just ended up there. And, I guess I could fit into that category in some way or another because I wasn't a super studier. I studied until the point where I was one of those like memorization studiers. Like I tried to like grind the picture into my brain so that when I saw the question, voila, I see the picture and now I got the answer. But my sister was a straight A student. She was one of those people who stressed herself out with studying. All the, index cards, annotations, whatever there needed to be for her to get an A, she made sure she got it done. I wasn't that type of student, but I still knew that I needed to pass my classes in order, to get to where my parents wasn't taking an F or a D, so I got my C's and my B's. I remember talking to this dude I knew from middle school, and we were in band together for a little bit through middle school and a little bit of high school. We ended up going to the same university, and he was telling me he graduated from an alternative high school, top of his class. He got all these scholarships, more college funding than I ever did. And I'm sitting there like, how? Because a year or two before that, my parents basically had me in a position where it was like, if you don't get into college, you need to be ready for military. No conversation, no soft landing, just figure it out. So I moved differently. I took it a little bit more seriously because I thought it meant something. And I'm not saying that, he didn't deserve those accolades. He didn't deserve the funding that he needed. I'm not sure how God and the universe, put that in front of him to get him out of whatever situation he may or may not have been in. It just made me realize early on that this whole thing wasn't as structured as they made it seem. Like the rules weren't as clear. The outcomes weren't as guaranteed, because how are we all following the same blueprint but landing in completely different places? And I remember growing up, people used to say college was a waste of time. And back then, that sounded crazy. Like, who says that? I remember applying to college and some people, that was their mindset. That's, they probably have already seen, what it took me a little bit longer to realize. If you have older siblings and they end up going to school before you have the opportunity to, you're able to learn through a different type of lens by learning through other people's experiences, but the first time I heard somebody, bring up trade school, I had my own thoughts about that too, because my mom worked at a Job Corps for a period of time in the heart of Atlanta. And the stories I heard, the stuff she would talk about after work, the environment, it didn't sound like a place where people were about to go become the next anything. So in my mind, that wasn't the route. That wasn't the vision. College was. But now, it's like everything we thought we understood about the right path is kind of blurry, because you got people with degrees working jobs that don't even require them, people with certifications making more, people who skipped college entirely building lives that look stable, peaceful, even fulfilling. And then you got people who did everything right. and are still trying to catch up. And I don't even think it's about saying one path is better than the other. It's just nobody really told us how uncertain all of this actually was. Like, yeah, they told us to go to college. They told us it would be able to open more doors for us, but they didn't really explain what happens when those doors don't open right away or at all. They weren't really specific about, how timing plays a role in everything, how the economy plays a role, how connections matter more than you think they do, how luck also plays a role, and how two people can do the same exact thing and get two completely different outcomes. So now you got a whole generation sitting here like, what was all that for? Not in a bitter way, just in trying to make sense of it all type of way. Because I remember a time before I got to college where people older than me were saying like college were the best days of their lives, right? I don't think high school or college were the best days of my lives. But I know some of us was stressed out in high school. AP classes, late nights, parents on your backs, guidance counselors talking to you about your future like it was on a timer. Whole time somebody else was just chilling, staying out of trouble, doing enough, bare minimum, and still ended up in a position that worked out better for them. And I think that's the part that messes with people. Now that, not that different paths exist, but that the one we were told was the most secure for us doesn't feel as secure anymore. And now we're all kind of figuring it all out in real time. And there's nothing wrong with that. Figuring it out in real time as you go. So yeah, this isn't even about me saying don't go to college or go to trade school or bet on yourself or any of that. This is me being real about something that I don't feel like it's talked about enough. Because a lot of us were following directions, thinking we understood the outcome. And now we're realizing it was never that simple. But maybe these are just the things that people let sit in their head instead of conversing about out loud. Like, what did you think was gonna happen? Really? Not what they told us, but what did you actually think your life was gonna look like after you did everything that you thought you were supposed to be doing? Did you think it was gonna, click for you right away? Like you'd graduate and just slide into the life that you pictured and imagined for yourself? Or did you already kind of feel like this might not go how they said it would? And you just did it anyway because that's what you thought you were supposed to be doing? Because I think about that a lot. Not in a regret type of way, just in a trying to understand the gap type of way between what we were told and what this actually feels like. And if you've been sitting here listening to this and made it all the way to this point, then yeah, you already have been having this conversation possibly in your head too. You just don't always have to say it out loud. And that's really all this was. Me just saying it. If you made it here, you're not just watching. You're a grateful heart, and I love you. I'll sit with you in the next one. Peace.